People think an empath is weak because they forgive too much, because they stay quiet too long, because they keep understanding the pain of others even while bleeding inside themselves. But what most people never realize is this. Empaths are not soft because they lack strength. They are soft because they have mastered restraint. They know exactly how cruel people can become, and they choose not to become that. That is why when you finally push an empath beyond their limit, the ending feels terrifyingly permanent. There is no screaming, no revenge, no dramatic explosion, just silence, distance, emotional disappearance. And the frightening part is, by the time you notice they are truly gone, it is already too late. Because an empath does not leave when they are angry. They leave when something inside them finally dies. And there are 3 things that kill that emotional connection faster than anything else. 3 lines you should never cross with an empath if you ever want to keep them in your life. Most people cross these lines without even realizing it because they mistake patience for weakness, kindness for dependency, and forgiveness for endless tolerance. But every empath has a hidden threshold, a place deep inside where love turns into emotional survival. And once they reach that place, they never see you the same again. The first thing you should never cross with an empath is betrayal of trust, not a small disappointment, not ordinary mistakes. Real betrayal. Because trust means something different to an empath than it does to most people. Empaths do not trust casually. They study energy. They study behavior. They observe inconsistencies most people miss. Long before they open their heart to someone, they fight a private war inside themselves asking one painful question. Is this person safe? That is why when an empath finally lets someone close, it is not random. It is sacred. They are giving access to parts of themselves the world never sees. Their fears, their wounds, their sensitivity, their emotional truth. And if you betray that after they trusted you, the damage cuts deeper than you can imagine. Because betrayal does not just hurt an empath emotionally. It changes the way they see humanity. They begin questioning their own intuition, their own judgment, their own ability to read people. And that internal collapse is devastating for someone whose entire life has been built around emotional awareness. What destroys them most is not even the betrayal itself. It is the realization that while they were protecting your feelings, you were secretly destroying theirs. That realization changes everything. Suddenly every memory becomes poisoned. Every kind word feels fake. Every moment gets re-examined through a darker lens. And once an empath reaches that point, they stop feeling emotionally safe around you. The connection may continue physically for a while, but emotionally something has already ended. You must understand this carefully. An empath can forgive pain, but they struggle to forgive deception, because pain can be accidental. Deception is intentional. And intentional emotional harm is something an empath never forgets. They may stop talking about it. They may stop arguing. They may even smile again. But internally, a door has closed. Forever. The second thing you should never cross with an empath is emotional manipulation. This is the one that destroys them slowly from the inside. Empaths naturally try to understand people. That is their gift, but it is also their vulnerability. Toxic people quickly learn this. They realize an empath will keep searching for reasons behind bad behavior. They will keep empathizing, keep excusing, keep trying to heal what keeps hurting them. And manipulators use this against them. They guilt trip them, gaslight them, twist reality, make them feel selfish for having boundaries, make them apologize for reacting to disrespect. Slowly, the empath begins doubting themselves. Their emotions become confused. Their mind becomes exhausted. They start carrying responsibility for problems they never created. And the most dangerous part is that empaths often stay too long in these situations because they see potential in people instead of patterns. They focus on who someone could become instead of accepting who they repeatedly choose to be. That is why manipulation is so psychologically damaging to an empath. It attacks their deepest instinct, the instinct to love and understand. The manipulator turns compassion into a weapon. And after enough emotional games, something tragic happens. The empath becomes emotionally numb. They stop recognizing themselves. The person who once felt everything deeply suddenly feels disconnected from life itself. This is why many empaths disappear without warning. People think they are overreacting, but they do not see the years of emotional exhaustion behind that final decision. They do not see the silent nights spent questioning reality, the mental battles, the emotional burnout. By the time an empath walks away, they have usually been grieving the relationship long before they physically leave. And once they finally choose peace over attachment, they become impossible to manipulate again, because pain taught them what their empathy should never tolerate. The third thing you should never cross with an empath is disrespecting their loyalty. This is the deepest wound of all, because when an empath loves someone they love with terrifying sincerity, they do not halfway care. They do not partially invest. Their loyalty runs emotionally deep. They remember the little things about you. They protect you in rooms you are not even present in. They defend you when nobody is watching. They absorb your pain like it is their own. And many people take this loyalty for granted because empaths make sacrifice look natural. But eventually the empath notices something painful. They are giving emotional energy. That is never returned. They are carrying relationships alone. They are the one always understanding, always forgiving, always checking in, always emotionally present while others remain emotionally careless. And over time, resentment quietly grows. Not because the empath expects perfection, but because they finally realize they are being loved far less than they love. That realization breaks something inside them, because loyalty is not casual for an empath. It is a sacred emotional commitment. When someone repeatedly disrespects that loyalty through neglect, selfishness, dishonesty, or emotional inconsistency, the empath eventually reaches emotional exhaustion. And when an empath becomes emotionally exhausted, they do something shocking. They detach completely, not dramatically, calmly, quietly, coldly. The warmth disappears. The emotional availability disappears. The constant effort disappears. Suddenly, the person who once fought endlessly for the relationship no longer reacts at all. And that emotional silence terrifies people because they realize too late that the empath is no longer emotionally connected. This is the moment many people panic. They try to fix things after months or years of emotional neglect, but the empath has already crossed an invisible line internally. Once an empath stops caring, it is almost impossible to bring them back, because their love was never temporary emotion. It was an emotional investment built over time. And when that investment gets repeatedly disrespected, they eventually choose themselves for the first time in a very long time. This is what people fail to understand about empaths. They are not emotionally weak. In reality, they survive emotional pain most people would collapse under. They endure disrespect longer than they should. They keep loving through confusion, disappointment, and emotional loneliness. But every empath has a breaking point hidden beneath their patience. And when they finally reach it, they transform completely. The person who once gave endless chances suddenly becomes unreachable, not because they stopped feeling, but because they finally learned that constantly saving others was destroying themselves. That is why losing an empath feels different from losing anyone else. They gave you emotional depth most people never experience. They loved parts of you nobody else even noticed. They tried to understand your darkness instead of judging it. And if you destroyed that connection through betrayal, manipulation, or disrespect, you did not just lose a relationship. You lost one of the rarest forms of emotional loyalty a human being can ever receive. And here is the painful truth most people realize too late. An empath rarely regrets leaving. They regret staying too long. They regret ignoring their intuition. They regret abandoning themselves trying to save people who never intended to change. Because eventually every empath discovers something life-changing empathy without. Boundaries become self-destruction. And the moment they understand this, their entire life changes. They stop chasing closure. They stop begging for honesty. They stop trying to prove their worth to emotionally unavailable people. Instead, they become protective of their peace, selective with their energy, careful with their trust. And suddenly the same empath people once controlled becomes emotionally untouchable, not cold, not cruel, just awake. So if you ever have an empath in your life, understand what you are holding. You are holding someone who feels emotions at a depth most people cannot even comprehend. Someone who notices pain hidden behind fake smiles. Someone who gives second chances even after being hurt. Someone who wants connection more than control. But never mistake their kindness for infinite tolerance. Never mistake their patience for permission to wound them endlessly. Because the strongest empaths are often the quietest ones, the ones silently carrying emotional pain while still showing love to everyone around them. And when those people finally decide they are done, there is rarely a way back. In the end, these are the three things you should never cross with an empath. Never betray their trust, never manipulate their emotions, and never disrespect their loyalty. Because once those lines are crossed too many times, the empath you once knew disappears forever. And the silence they leave behind becomes the loudest lesson of your life.